Good morning. It's time to rise and shine. My name is Haley Jacob, and I'm your host for the Rise and Shine podcast. Hello, hello. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome or welcome back to the Rise and Shine podcast. I know I took a unintended break last week um, because I was sick, and I am not at the point anymore where I have pre-recorded any episodes. So I got sick and I was unprepared, and that's what happens. It actually ended up being COVID. So I'm really happy that when I felt it, I did not go out anywhere. It was actually a Sunday morning that I started feeling sick and I stayed home from church, and I was like, oh, should I have gone to church? And then I found out it was COVID, and I was like, no, I'm really glad I didn't. Because I don't like feeling like I could get people sick. Um, but I'm better, but you might still hear some congestion, some stuffiness. I'm still getting over it, still recovering. I'm getting winded kind of quickly. So just bear with me. If any of that happens, bear with me. And I also hope that this episode makes sense because I've been on COVID brain for a little bit, but I'm all good. I'm all good. I'm excited to be back. Okay, so this past week, because I've been home all week, I've seen a few posts this past week, or maybe it was like a couple weeks ago, that we are now moving into the BER months, like BER months. And I've seen a couple of posts, and I guess I just never, maybe at one point I knew, but I never was consciously aware of that from September till the end of the year, all of the months do end in BER, like September, October, November, December. And I love that they're called that. I love that people are calling them that because they're my favorite months. Okay, except for December, with the exception of Christmas, but I don't like it. I don't like winter, but they're my favorite months. So I love that people are referring them to as that. So happy BER months. We're now in the BER month. So we are moving into my absolute favorite time of the year, fall. Fall is my favorite for so many reasons, but mostly it's because I have a lot of fond childhood memories that took place in the fall. You have all of those family holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. You have church fall festivals. So it's a lot of togetherness feeling. But I remember sitting outside as a kid on my swing set in my backyard, and I remember I was just sitting alone, swinging, first child. I know how to entertain myself. So I was swinging alone, feeling the breeze, and I was hearing the birds sing, and I was seeing the leaves fall and change color. And even at that age, I was just so impressed by God and his beauty. And I was just kind of sitting there soaking it all in. And I would sing worship songs that I made up, like on my little swing set. And just it's that's what fall is to me. Like that's those memories. Like I just have those memories of just being so thankful. And it wasn't even during Thanksgiving necessarily, but just being thankful for for the Lord, And it's just full of fun, family, coziness. So it's absolutely my favorite season. But here in Oklahoma, it is rare that we get a real fall season, sadly. It's usually it's summer heat all the way through mid-October and about 2 weeks of real fall, and then bam, we're into winter. And winter is my least favorite, except Christmas, but winter is my least favorite. But I've come to appreciate all seasons, even though fall is the best. I do appreciate all of the seasons. And as much as I don't like winter, we need it. We need winter to reset, to freeze out all the pests left over from the hot summer months so they aren't returning in droves. We need winter to rest and relax a little bit. We need winter to be able to enjoy the harvest from the fall months. We need winter to prepare for the spring. And honestly, that's like life. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So grab your coffee, find your comfiest chair, and let's rise and shine. So I want to open with Ecclesiastes 3, and many of you, if you have been going to church for an extended period of time, you've probably come across this passage of scripture. But this is Ecclesiastes 3 verses 1 through 8. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. And going down to verse 11, He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. So, that is such a lovely passage, a lovely just set of scripture, because in life, there is a time for everything. And we're going to experience all of those times. We're going to experience all of those things listed. And it's okay if you're going through a time of weeping, a time of mourning, because there's also going to be a time to dance. It's so encouraging. And it's encouraging, but it's also like humbling at the same time, because if you're in a time to dance, there's going to be times to mourn too, and that's okay. Just because you aren't dancing doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, right? So, like I said, we're currently transitioning from summer to fall. And as much as people joke about, like, in this area not having true seasons, or in certain parts of the world because of the weather, like, in Oklahoma, we say, oh, if you don't like the weather, just wait 30 minutes and it'll change. So we don't have true seasons, or it's really hot, whatever. The truth is, Earth has always had changing seasons from the beginning of time. No matter if it's a winter that brings no snow, or a summer that never gets above 85, or whatever the stereotype may be for a certain season, because God made the earth to spin around the sun in a certain way and on a certain axis and at certain times, the earth will always have 4 different seasons each year, no matter what. Genesis 1:14 says, "And God said, Let there be lights, an expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night." It's talking about the sun and the moon and the stars. "And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years." So it's saying that God created the sun, the moon, and the stars, and we use them to mark different times of the year. That's our seasons. That's why um, back before, like, all of the technology we have, they knew, like, what day it was. They knew what time of day it was by looking at the sun, or they knew where they were before they had compasses, because they looked at the stars and they could tell where they were in the stars and what time of year it was based on where the stars were in the sky. It's super cool. That's how it's created, because God created the seasons. Genesis 8:22 says, "While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease." So this is after the second verse is after Noah and the flood, and God promised that he would not flood the earth again, and he also promised that the earth would always have those seasons. They that's while the earth remains, seed time and harvest time. There will always be these different times of the year because that's how it's created. Because when the earth flooded, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. There were no seasons during those 40 days, right? There was no weather change. There was none of that. It was all just rain season. Like, that's it. That's what it was. So right there is your promise that the 4 seasons we experience will never go away, will never change. That these seasons will always be there. And seasons and changing seasons is part of life also. No matter if you're a Christian or a non-Christian, like, we will all go through different seasons of life. Think about, like, literal, think about age. We go through seasons in our physical body as we age. Um, you know, we go through seasons mentally and emotionally as well. We go through seasons where we, like, through what we are and who we are and what we do in life. Like, we all go through some sort of season at some point of life, and it's always changing. Just like God promised that the earth seasons would always change, he promises us in Ecclesiastes that life has a time or a season for things too. And things are going to come and go in our lives. And that we won't live life in the same circumstances for the whole duration of our life. Our life is not always going to be the exact circumstances that we are born into. We're not always going to stay in this one place, in this one season for our entire lives. And maybe you're sitting there right now and you're in a great season of life and you're thinking about, I don't want my life to change. I want to stay in the same place. I want it to just be fall all the time. And it's like, well, yeah, me too, same, because fall is the best. But seasons are necessary for growth. We have to change. We have to develop. We have to grow. If it were fall all the time, like farming wise, fall is a big harvest time. If the earth lived in harvest season all the time, where you just reap and you don't sow, then we would run out of harvest. We would run out of food real quick, because if we're not in sowing season, the soil isn't ready to be planted again. It hasn't gone through the winter for a rest, and it isn't fertile like it is in the spring. So if we were always in that harvest time, then our harvest would run short real fast, because it's not being replenished. It's not going through that next season of sowing so that we can reap. If our seasons, our circumstances, or our life doesn't grow through seasons, we become lazy. We get too comfortable with where we are. And in the long run, that being lazy and comfortable and too content is worse than the discomfort we may feel during life transitions. Proverbs 20, verses 4 through 5 says, "Sluggards do not plow in season, so at harvest time they look but find nothing. He who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son." When we get too comfortable in our season, and when we don't expect the seasons to change, when we think it's always going to be like this, then we don't put in the work in that's required for the next season. Whether or not we like it, life around us will change because God promises it will. And then we have no harvest because we didn't work during the plow season. Sluggards do not plow in season. A sluggard. Like, that just, those are creepy crawlies, right? Like, we don't want to be compared to a sluggard. It's like being compared to a sloth, although sloths, I think they're adorable. But, like, you think, if you're thinking like, oh, the seven, quote unquote, seven deadly sins, like, slovenliness is one of them, like laziness. We don't want to be compared to that. And so when we're not working in the season it's time to work in, then we won't be able to reap when it's reaping season. We can't sleep through the work and then expect a plentiful harvest. But the great part is if we are working in the right season, and if you're working hard, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Yes, you may be tired, and yes, you may be, okay, I'm like ready for a rest. But if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing in the season, God will provide a season of rest for us. He will provide that season. We don't have to dread the working season because we know that God has rest planned for us. It's like the winter time in farming. Like winter is a like I mean, for more or less a restful season because you're not necessarily it's too cold to plant anything and all the harvest has been reaped or it's died off from the cold. So there's not like a ton you can do unless you're farming animals and that's different. But God has that season of rest planned for us in the right time. It may not be necessarily in our timing when we want to rest, because, like, when I want to rest, it's like 1 o'clock and I've still got classes, right? So I can't rest at that time. But it's in His perfect timing. So we have to be doing what we're supposed to be doing for each season to produce what it's supposed to produce. We have to be doing and working in whatever season we are in. We must go through seasons as people, but especially as Christians. Seasons are meant for our growth and development, like I said, but we also don't want to rush into the season. So we don't want to stay comfortable in the season we're in, but we also don't want to rush into the next season. We don't want to force something new to happen when it's not ready. Even Paul in 1 Corinthians talks about Christians being fed milk because they aren't ready for solid food. They haven't grown into that season where they're ready for solid food. They're in the young stage of life. They're in that young season of being a Christian where all they can take is milk and you can't feed them solid food yet. You can't rush them into feeding solid food because they won't be able to swallow it. Maybe right now, for example, you may be in a season of singleness, okay? So just use that as an example. Maybe you're in a season of singleness because God wants you to grow in some area of your life before you jump into a relationship with someone else. There's always a reason for the season that you are in. I didn't intend for that to rhyme, but it did, and so it works. But there's always a reason for the season that you're in. Now, being in a season of singleness doesn't mean that you're destined to be single forever. It may seem like that season is an extended period of time by our standards, maybe, or maybe not. It doesn't mean that you aren't good enough to be in a relationship. Doesn't mean that. It just means that in this particular season, God has something else for you, and He has something else He wants you to do. He has something else He wants your focus on. And that may mean that the season for dating is coming up next for you, or coming up later, or coming in a while, right? But we don't want to jump into something like that in the wrong season. So staying with this example, if you jump in to a relationship too quickly, then it's not going to develop right. So going back to, since we're talking about seasons, and like seasons are based on, or farming is based on seasons. If you try to plant spring flowers in the dead of winter, those seeds don't have the necessary elements to grow properly, and they will die right away. They won't even like take root. Those seeds will just get cold, dry up, and die. If you're jumping in too soon, your crops or your relationship, right? It won't grow properly. If you're called to be in a season of singleness and you jump into a relationship, that relationship, it will not flourish, and it eventually will wither up and die out and freeze because it has no way to grab root because it was planted out of season. Even if, it could be like that might be the right person, but the wrong time. And you jump ahead of it and you slow it down because you jumped ahead in the wrong season. Now we have to take a step back and retill the soil, right? And prepare that, right? I'm not saying that if you jump ahead with the right person that like it's over, that's it, sorry guys. Like, no, God will work everything out for the good of those who love him. But it may not have happened as God had wanted it to, because you did it out of season. Does that make sense? Hoping I make sense. Making sense, guys. I'm just a little still a little tired today. Or maybe you're coming away from a really great season in your life. Maybe this is the opposite. Maybe you're like not trying to get out of a season and rushing into the next season. Maybe you're currently in a great season of life and you feel a stirring. You feel yourself maybe being pulled or transitioned out of that season. And maybe you're worried about the next season not being as good, right? Because that can happen. You think too far ahead in the future, or maybe it is happening and you're worried like, oh man, what I was doing is fantastic. I don't want this to change. I just want to stay here. I don't want to move on. This is where I want to stay. For example, like maybe you're a speaker or an author or a teacher or preacher or something like that. And God has created this great ministry through you. And all of a sudden you feel that ministry is changing. That can be terrifying. And it can be a little discouraging if you think about it. That can feel discouraging. Like God has given you this wonderful gift and you feel like, why are you taking it away? But it doesn't mean that he's necessarily taking it away. It doesn't mean that you've done something wrong or done something bad. A career change, or God starting to slow down your ministry, or starting to hand off your ministry to someone else. It's not necessarily a punishment that and God is taking away his blessings. That's not necessarily what a season change is. And I've heard many speakers talk about this. Many, like, I'll say more seasoned, not older, but more seasoned speakers talk about how, they were they were like flourishing, they were thriving in this ministry. It was growing, whatever they were doing this certain thing, and they were loving it. And they felt God say, okay, now you're going to do this. And they're like, what? I've never done that. This is going great. Why are you changing this? Why would you call me to do this? I've never done that. And they all talk about how, like, it's scary, it feels weird, but God always knows what he's doing. So like most of the time they have this certain platform or ministry and you're thriving in it, and he calls you to do something else. That doesn't mean that they misused that platform. Although if you do misuse a platform, I do think that eventually, it may not be immediate, eventually it will fall. And that's a different topic, but that's not necessarily what it means. If God is moving you away from something, it doesn't mean that it's falling. It means he's moving you into something else. He's moving you into a new season. Maybe it's going to be a season of rest. Maybe you've been working and working and working in this ministry, and yes, you love it, but maybe it's time for a season of rest. Maybe you're needing to pass the torch of that ministry to someone else who's growing into their season of ministry. And while you rest in the Lord, maybe it's something new completely. And because you have this established platform and this established ministry, you're able to easily now move into that brand new thing that God has planned. It's scary, but it's always good. New seasons are always good. Daniel 2 verse 21 says, he changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. God is the one who gives you your ministry, and God is the one who moves you out of your ministry. And again, it's not always because you did something wrong. Yes, I do believe he will remove people from power who are misusing it. Um, he will take those things. I believe sometimes it doesn't always work out how we think it should, but he will remove those people. But that doesn't mean that what you are doing, you're being moved for a bad reason. It's because he changes the seasons. He changes what you're calling. I'll say, I've heard someone talk about like your calling and how sometimes your calling, maybe the calling itself doesn't change in your life, but how you work in your calling changes throughout your life, if that makes sense. So it's just like you're moving into a new part of your calling that he wants to use you for. If you do have some sort of thriving ministry that you maybe may be feeling like, ooh, guys, is changing hands, or feel like God is moving you away from it, remember that it's him who gave it to you in the first place. And he's in control of those seasons of our lives. And we just have to trust him and know that this change is good. And we may or may not know the reason why he's moving us out of the season, but we have to trust that it is for the best. Maybe if we were to stay in that season, our stronghold grip on the ministry or whatever it is doesn't allow for it to continue and flourish. Maybe if you holding on and trying to stay in that season and trying not to be blown by the seasonal wind and you holding tight, maybe that is what brings down the ministry. You have to let go, right? Or it could be that your physical body needs a rest and God knows it before you ever could. Maybe he's moving into you to a season of rest, and you might not feel like you need rest now, but then you get to that season of rest and you're like, "Oh, I'm so glad that God allowed me to pass off this thing that is in my control to capable hands in the right way, in a good way, before it was like crazy, before whatever. There's always a reason for the season change. We don't always know, but we do know that season changes can be uncomfortable. It means that some things have to die so that new things can grow. New leaves can't grow on the trees unless the old ones fall away. Don't be afraid of these trying seasons. So maybe you're not in a comfortable season right now and you're not trying to hold on. Maybe you're like in a really trying season. If you find yourself in a season of falling away, like the leaves, or of letting go, or of things withering away, you just feel like, okay, what is going on? Nothing's growing. What is going on? Well, one, if nothing is growing, take a look at inwardly first, your heart, right? Because we should be producing good fruit, but that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when the Lord is moving you into a new season, or into just like a trying season. Just when you're in those times, know that that means the next season is a season of spring, right? The next season is growth and all things being made new. If you feel like you're in a season where just things are not going your way, things are falling away, then that means that God is prepping you for the new things he's wanting to grow in your life. He has to make room. He has to prune. He has to let those leaves die off to make room for the new leaves. Look forward to the upcoming sunlight in your time of darkness, because again, God promises that seasons will change. Not just for those in good seasons, but those in dark seasons. And no matter what season you are in, God is still good. He is still love and he still sees you. Trust him through these changes because he's always there. He's always got a better plan for you. There's always, always a light at the end of that tunnel. Galatians 6, verse 9 says, "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." Do not grow weary of doing good. Do not grow weary of the plowing season because soon the season's going to change and it's going to be harvest season. But you can't give up. I want to share just a little story of my husband, Jared. He went through this long season after kind of, I mean, it was after college, like, because we were engaged and partly through the beginning of our marriage, where he went through this season where he just felt like he couldn't really focus. He couldn't um read physical books or read things on the screen really well. We actually found out that he has this thing called visual snow, where it for him it looks like everything. Imagine a TV with static on it. That's kind of like what it looks like for him that's how he sees the world. And he went through this season where in work he was just struggling to stay like focused. He was struggling to like read what he was supposed to be reading, and he wanted to go. He had just started what's it called? Masters. His masters, that's what it's called. He had just gone back to school or was planning on going back to school, and then he did go back to school, and he just felt like studying was the hardest thing in the world. And it was just a really difficult season for him. He was discouraged, and now like he's at the same job, but he's in a different position, and it's just the Lord has brought him from that season and even physically moved his job position into this different season in his work, and he's noticing he's able to focus more. He's able to read. He's in his last semester of his master's now, and he's able to do all the studying that he needs to do. He's able to do in this new position he's in. He's got to have a really good eye for detail for certain things because of he's like, I don't know, he's super smart. So he's got to see all these tiny little things, and he can do that now, and God has like, and I don't, his snow vision is still there, but he's moved him out of this season of trial and difficulty and moved him into this season where, like, yes, he still has to put in the work and he still has to work towards it, but it's easier for him. And he's it's not that it's like easier for him, but he feels, I think, more confident in doing it. And that's we all have those things. We all have those things that in our life, those seasons where we just struggle and it feels like we're never going to get out of these seasons. But if we do not grow weary of doing good, Jared didn't give up. He didn't give up. He didn't quit school. He didn't quit his job. He didn't give up. And in due season, we will reap. We will reap if we do not give up. So I just want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to keep trying, keep working, keep looking for what you're supposed to be doing in the season that you're in, and keep preparing for the next season. So how do we know? How do we know when a season change is coming? Matthew 24, verse 32 says, "Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near." And so this is when Jesus is talking about signs of the end times. He's saying there will be signs, just like when the twigs like get tender and it starts to bloom some leaves, we know, okay, summer's coming. That's what Jesus is saying. There are going to be signs of season changes in our life and in the world as a whole. That's what Jesus was talking about. It may be that we're feeling a pull or a stir in our heart. Maybe that's the beginning of it. It may be like interests in other things, or it may be like you keep hearing this one thing over and over again, or people keep saying the same thing to you, or maybe doors are opening that you didn't even like try to open. Like doors are opening for you, and then maybe other doors are closing. There are always signs, and these signs always line up, especially if it's people speaking into you. Always line it up with the word of God. Make sure it lines up. But there are going to be signs that the Lord is moving you into a new season. We know fall is coming when the weather cools down and when the leaves start to change color and when the sun goes down sooner at night. We know that means, okay, fall is coming. There's going to be signs. We just have to look for them. And if we're not looking for them, then we might miss them. And then winter will just come out of nowhere, right? If we're not looking for those signs, then we are not going to be prepared for the next season. If we don't see the signs of it getting colder and of snow, and we don't start stocking up firewood, then all of a sudden you're snowed in and you don't have any firewood in your house, right? It takes you off guard, but there's always signs of snow that's coming, right? What happens if we find ourselves in an unexpected seasonal change and we haven't prepared our hearts or our spirits for that seasonal change? If we haven't been spending time with God and we suddenly find ourselves in a time of financial struggle or spiritual dryness or relationship problems, like what, you're not prepared. You haven't been prepping, you haven't been gathering. And so these catch you off guard, and it's going to throw you off a little bit when those things happen. We don't have much to grab on at that point because we didn't store up for the upcoming season. God is still there with us. He hasn't left us, but we haven't prepared our hearts to trust in Him. We have to be on the lookout for these signs of changing seasons so that we can be prepared. Well, that is all I have for you today. I hope it made sense. I know I'm like you can hear the congestion. I'm a little winded, and I know I kind of like feel like I lost my train of thought every once in a while. Not gonna lie, gonna be completely honest with you guys. I kind of did. But I had it all written out. I had notes. I was prepared. I was prepared for this season. But I hope you enjoyed this episode today. I did have fun prepping for it. I just love episodes like this. I pray that if you are in a difficult season in your life, that you're clinging to God during this time and praying for Him to prepare you for the next season and to look forward to the bright season coming. And if you're currently in a wonderful season right now, soak it up, enjoy it, be joyful. Don't dread the season change, but also be doing the work for whatever is coming up next. I love you guys. You guys are awesome, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and leave a review, and follow the pod on Instagram at the Rise and Shine Podcast with "and" spelled out. If you have any questions or topics you'd like me to discuss, you can send me an email at haley.riseandshine@gmail.com. That's HAYLEE, and the word "and" is spelled out. Now, go out there and shine.